So Art is a 36-year professional in public transportation at the local state, 2 years experience with New Jersey Department of Transportation. And he's been working on policy, government affairs, advocacy for at all levels of government, cabinet programs, and so on. He has a political science degree from Edinburgh State University and a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Among other positions, he currently serves as the National President of the Transportation Research Forum. He's married 36 years, father of 4 children, and grandfather of 3. So with that, thank you very much for being here in the UK.
Thank you, Pasi, and I will say that Michael Milanofi's loss was my gain here on this magnificent autumn day, and my impression of Michigan Tech is quite idyllic, based on the great vistas, the fall colors, and the great people here at your university. When I've called back to my colleagues in Washington today for some breaking news that I'll be talking to you about, I've laced those conversations with factoids. For example, the literature in the hotel I'm at says that this is the northernmost city in the lower 48 states. So I don't know if that's maybe people in Copper Harbor might dispute that, or some other places, but I'll take it. Hey, this is where we are. It is also, I think, the Upper Peninsula is the westernmost part of the Eastern time zone, further west than Chicago. And I impressed some people with that factoid today there. Of course, the most of all, I didn't know this, and neither did anyone else I talked to, but now more people know it than at the beginning of the day. This is where pro hockey started. Hoorah! Right? Right here. Who knew? Who knew? Right here in this town. So I bring best wishes from APTA's president and CEO, Michael Milanofi, just recovering from a week and a half off work, and coming back to work with a major transportation bill moving through Congress this week, a positive train control deadline at our threshold. I'll talk about that too. And also, just housekeeping. APTA today is our last day at our present location, 1600 K Street, the nefarious K Street, but 2 blocks away from 1600, the equally nefarious 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So that's where we are. We're moving just about 3 blocks away, and we're dealing with all of these things today. But I escaped all of that by being here. Hey, just to say that my great career, and I know I'm talking to a lot of students here as well as professionals, but all 36 years of my career have been in public transportation. I was on the legislative team that created New Jersey Transit. And then when we did that, it was a hodgepodge of railroads. There was no coordinated system out of that. And we had the great times, and things take a long time to cultivate the seeds that are planted. But a system has grown from that, and it's all been integrated. I think it's a great system in New Jersey. I was proud to be part of the planning and development of it. I spent some great years in Pittsburgh, where we opened a new rail line, and been at APTA since for 18 years now. APTA goes back, by the way, to 1882. It predates the internal combustion engine even. So when you talk about a world of changing technologies and an ever-changing landscape, there's been a lot of adaptation since then time. APTA, it's the whole array of systems. It's commuter rail, it's the bus, it's streetcars, all of the family of systems that come together. My background is policy, politics, legislation. I know I'm talking to a lot of engineers here, but we're all part of the same team: research, data, and analysis. On the partnering side, a lot of you might be affiliated with APTA, of course, the American Public Transportation Association, where all the public transit systems are the core of our membership, but we're also the businesses that work with them to deliver their services. We partner a lot with AAR. In fact, yesterday, Michael Malanaphy, on his first day back from his illness, was on with Ed Hamburger, the head of Association of American Railroads, on a media tour on the PTC issue, because we are getting close to rug cutting time to deal with that issue. Of course, we deal a lot with APTA, ARIMA, CUTSI, the Council of University Transportation Centers, just to mention a few key partners. Now, hey, I do want to say congratulations to the students here. You have chosen wisely. I would say there's no better choice than rail engineering. You are needed. I can say in my circles, I hear the need for the workforce, engineers going, engineers in demand, engineers based on the growth that we project that we're going to need in the future. I met last week with the Federal Railroad Administration on sort of project development issues, and this issue came up. And it came up in the context, why is the Federal Highway Program so cozy with the universities that there's a lot of interaction that's not there on rail? And my answer to that was, the federal program is set up that way. The federal program is set up in a way that there's a natural relationship. The development of the highway program was in conjunction, in partnership with the universities. Rail, we haven't been as smart on that point, I don't think. And we need to get that into the federal program, that it's in there, the National Cooperative Highway Research Program. Builds in universities as a partner. Rail, we have a rail cooperative research program, zero funding the last 4 years, right? So we're not going to cultivate much of a partnership with that kind of a federal program where the highway has it just the opposite. Okay, so we have to get smart on that. I'm going to go through just a couple facts on public transit. Rail is certainly in the transit arena. When we're talking about streetcars that are currently in a renaissance, it's sort of a back to the future kind of thing. We know light rail, heavy rail, commuter rail, something now that FTA is, Federal Transit Administration, is called hybrid rail, intercity passenger rail, and all the growth of corridor services, including high-speed rail. Every day, there's 36 million boardings on public transit. That's a lot. Name any other business that has that many face-to-face customers, and I would suggest there are none. 52% of trips are on bus, 44% on rail, and the others are on various other services, ferries, whatnot. But that percentage is getting closer. Rail is present in high-capacity corridors. When rail services are being put in, and every year there are more and more, they're popular. So rail it won't be long before bus is under the 50%. Now, good for bus. That doesn't mean they're diminishing in their role. It just means these high-density corridors are more appropriately served by rail, and bus may be a connecting kind of a role. They'll all work together as a system, but rail is definitely growing. Public transit is a $64 billion annual business, employs 400,000 directly and almost 2 million through various contracts. When I started my career in around 1980, there were 9 commuter rail systems. Today there are 29. When I started in 1980, there were 7 light rail systems. Today there are 38. And we're seeing those trends manifest in so many other ways. Commuter rail systems, just a little factoid here from the notes I have here. When I was at NJ Transit, we were operated by Conrail. Conrail may be something some have never heard of. It might be something many are very familiar with in a historical sense. But Conrail was a institution created when many of the Eastern Bank railroads went bankrupt. And it was actually a very successful experiment. The feds had to step in. Railroads are too important to let go. They stepped in, and railroads got back on their feet and became private again. But NJ Transit had the choice to operate by, we operated by Conrail for a while, but then we went on our own. That was sort of the model that the old legacy railroads do. A lot of the new ones now operate through contract. The old systems that operate directly, Metro in Chicago, Northern Indiana, Long Island, Metro North in New York, SEPTA, Southeastern Pennsylvania, Transit Authority in Philadelphia. And many of the new ones, San Diego, they call it the Surfliner, the Southern California system, Metrolink, the list goes on and on, contracting out. But just to put that, as a point of information, some operate directly, some operate through contract. The forward-looking trends are going to favor the continued growth of rail. The population is growing about 3 million people a year. Combine that with the fact that a lot of the growth is happening in urban areas where public transportation is essential, rail transportation is essential. The socio and demographic trends, the younger generation, but also the old aging baby boomers and everything in between. The love affair with the car is not quite the same as it was. And transit is much more open as an option and essential as an option. The economic trends, the fact that we underpin the economy, connect jobs with people and people with jobs, prime the pumps of the economic engines by keeping urban areas and other areas mobile, productive, efficient, competitive. All of those things make it essential that transit investments occur. The energy and environmental trends, the affordability trends, very important. When you're spending 19% of your household income on transportation, which is the national statistics, more than everything except housing, more than food and healthcare combined, transportation. But if you can save money by having one less car in your driveway, if you can have 2 instead of 3, $10,000 your household saves. If you can have 1 instead of 2, $10,000 your household can save. Now, what else can you do as a choice in your home to save that much money? Now, I asked that question and someone said, have less children. Well, that's I'll take that as a possibility there, but there aren't many things you can do. And the way people are voting with their feet also favor public transit. Now, ridership has, since 1995, public transit ridership is double the rate of population growth. We are cutting into market share. When you ask public directly in elections, will you support additional public transit investments in your community, additional rail investments, light rail lines, raise your sales tax to do that? Over 70% of the time, over a 15-year trend, the answers come back yes. So people are willing to make that investment, are willing to pay for what they get. It's just that that's not happening in Washington the way we want. I'll talk about that right now. Now, the news I have to report is in 3 fronts. There's the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill that's going to be moving forward this week. There's the positive train control legislation that's going to occur within the next few weeks. And there's significantly a rail title in the Surface Transportation Bill. It used to be that rail was treated different. You had highways and transit considered here, and you had an Amtrak and other rail programs considered over there, and a lot of times the rail programs weren't always dealt with quickly. Not as quickly as the highway and transit. So, highway and transit is funded through a federal, state, local partnership. Freight rail is largely private. Amtrak and intercity on a separate program. But every gallon of gas you buy, 18 cents of it goes into what's called the Highway Trust Fund. Now, of that 18 cents that goes into the Highway Trust Fund, 2.86 cents goes to support the rail investments, the public transit investments. Not since 1993, over 20 years, has that federal gas tax increased. It's been 18 cents since 1993. So certainly it's time to take a look at that. The public knows, and I think Congress knows for sure, that infrastructure underpins the economy. It is essential. It is something that we need. But when it's a politically tough vote, and you're going to be called upon at the next election, did you raise taxes? People aren't willing sometimes to make that tough vote. Well, obviously we can't go on that forever, or else our infrastructure is totally going to fall apart. This year we're trying to deal with it. We'll see this Thursday, the day after tomorrow, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee will move forward a bill. The Senate already has done so, and it does include a rail title. The first week in November, that bill will be considered by the full House, and by Thanksgiving, at least according to the plan, Congress will be considering what they call a conference report, a House-Senate compromise on a federal surface transportation bill. Now, it's hard to come up with the right balance. It's a big country. You have 50 states, north, south, east, west. You have big systems, small systems. You have bus systems, rail systems. But I think this bill does a reasonably good job of doing that. It's far too little investment. It's far too little support. We can talk about that federal, state, local, and partnership. Well, you know, the feds have a piece of that. They're holding their own, but they're not growing the way our country's growing and the way we need to grow. Another thing I would say in a critical way, although in the end I'm saying this bill at least is progress, I'm going to try to, with my colleagues, work for its passage this week and next month. But let me put a few markers down, because there are things we can try to work together to fix. First of all, we have to nurture our manufacturing. And it's a global economy. It is critical. We have American jobs, but not all companies are fully American. And we're wrestling with some of these Buy America requirements. The best situation is if there's a lot of competition in the marketplace, and if something is 60% America, does it have to be 100% America? Yeah. Anyway, we're wrestling with some of those kinds of issues. We also have the New Starts program. Now, listen to this: if you build a road, you're allowed by law to build that road with 80% federal funds. If you build a new rail line in your community, this bill would say, well, there's not enough money to go around, so what we're going to do is offer you 50% federal funds. Well, in practice, it's been hard. Most projects end up getting built with 50% anyway, just because you need to get them done and you'll wait forever for 80%. But to put that in law, that you can build a road for 80% federal, but a rail line in your community is only 50, doesn't that skew local decision making? I think it does. So we're working against that. But the bill also includes some streamlining provisions I could get into. Very good. Regulations are important sometimes, but sometimes they're too much. So this bill is taking a look at some of those things. Passy and I were talking about the research programs. There is a freight cooperative research program in there, which will be good for railroads. There's a rail cooperative research program. We've got to do some work on the University Transportation Centers program. In general, research is underfunded. It's the guiding light. It helps us provide solutions, answers, yet it's underfunded. I don't know why. Standards projects are underfunded. Just somehow, if we can raise our collective voice on those issues, that voice is not being heard enough. Let me mention a little bit about positive train control. Big issue, huge issue, possibly ball game type issue, because the law says, some know this, but for those that don't, I'm going to reiterate a few basic facts. A law was passed a few years ago mandating positive train control. Now, positive train control is a good thing, I would suggest. APTA has supported it for a long time. In the mid-1990s, New Jersey Transit had a train accident. The train operator was colorblind, couldn't see a red signal. There was an accident. You know, the message there is, well, there's something wrong with the system if you have a color-coded lights and it's not going to work all the time. So we said, yeah, we probably do need some safeguard system in the event of human error. So positive train control is that kind of answer. And we've made incremental progress towards it. But another accident a few years ago in California, I think triggered the 2008 PREA law that also included a Rail Safety Act provision that says you must have positive train control. Every passenger railroad, every commuter railroad, intercity railroad, and every freight railroad that either has passengers on its tracks or hazardous materials on its tracks has to have positive train control in effect by January 1st, 2016. Okay, I said we supported it, but without the time to do it, without the money to do it, and without the radio spectrum to do it, it's not going to happen. You know, it's one thing to say it has to be done, but without those levels of support, it's just an unfunded mandate, right? We've been working hard to get it out of the 29 commuter railroads that I mentioned. 7 do have it, but the rest don't. So what's going to happen on January 1st? You're not going to operate outside the law, right? You're not going to operate if you're liable for anything that happens in that. So we're facing a potential shutdown on the nation. Imagine that. The nation's railroads will shut down on January 1st. That's something that has to be dealt with, right? And but we're getting close. And we're saying January 1st is not the deadline. It's November 1st that's the deadline, because once November 1st starts to happen, you have to mobilize for shutdown. You have to start, what are you going to do with your equipment? What are you going to do with your, how are you going to communicate to your passengers? How are you going to deal with your employees? And fortunately, so that's all the background. Fortunately, the Senate bill that passed a few weeks ago includes language to extend the deadline. The House bill that's going to be acted on Thursday is going to extend the deadline till 2018 and allow 2 additional years perhaps. They're saying every railroad should come back with a plan, how they're going to implement positive train control, and that plan has to be considered by FRA. But looks like a deal is in sight on that. Let me mention just a few more things here, Pasi. I think it's a breakthrough that the Senate bill that passed, the Senate Surface Transportation Bill, Highway and Transit Bill, includes a rail title. Now, they always have included a rail title, but this is a more robust rail title because it includes a full Amtrak authorization, and it includes a little bit on high-speed rail, not nearly enough. Now it's part of the package. Now we have highways, we have transit, we have passenger rail. And freight rail is primarily private, but it certainly benefits from the system that's in place. So anyway, that is a breakthrough. One other troubling provision, something, when I say troubling, it's something we're working on. Liability insurance is a cost of doing business. It's sensible that it be capped. Without a cap, it could say in an accident how much insurance you're going to need. $1 million, $2 million. 200. Anyway, there's a cap of 200 million. That's a lot of insurance. So much that you can't even get it most of the time in this country. You have to go offshore to get it. Well, they're saying, well, let's raise the cap. The Senate bill would raise the cap to 295 million. That means that's more money going offshore for insurance. There has to be a better way to do that, and we're working on that. Final couple points. I've talked a little bit about high-speed rail, but I want to say that, and my good friend Tim Hefner's here, who's a champion on having Michigan Michigan being a leader in passenger rail, and they're doing it here where a lot of other states are talking about it. But not only here in Michigan, Tim's a national leader here. And seeds are being planted. America has the city pairs that could make passenger rail, even high-speed rail, very robust. It has the prosperity in those corridors to support regular train service. And let me say this, the seeds are out there. We have almost 2,500 miles of rail, intercity rail, where construction is underway. We have 680 miles ready to go, but for funds. And there is 5,700 miles in development that are getting ready, right? And this isn't a bomber rail, this is state rail plans. So these are states that are getting ready. The future is robust. Just the openings in the last few years. That's why these are exciting projects that you future engineers are going to be working on. Just in the last few years, we've seen a rail on its way to Dulles Airport in Washington. It's halfway there. It's going to be there all the way in a couple years. We've seen Orlando open up a new commuter rail system. That was the 29th system. Denver will become the 30th commuter rail system in April of next year. We've seen streetcars opening every year. The streetcars are in a renaissance, and it's not just for mobility, it's because they're shaping their community, they're sparking economic development in their neighborhoods. There's a reason streetcars are coming back. Dallas is opening a new line every year. They opened a line this year connecting to DFW Airport. Atlanta and Tucson opened streetcars. Minneapolis opened a second light rail line connecting it with St. Paul. The New York number 7 line, big stuff, opening. That's in addition to the East Side Access Program, a huge mega project, and the 2nd Avenue Subway, another huge mega project. World-class stuff. It is hard to get these projects done. There's so many years of planning, project development. Salt Lake City, 4 in 1 year. They opened 4 lines in 1 year. That's the kind of excitement that's going on out there. Houston, you think of Houston as the land of the automobile. They opened 2 rail lines last year. That's the kind of excitement that we're seeing. Now, final point, and this almost is a little bit tangential, but I think it's one important to say, and it's affecting a lot of my stuff. I'm a policy guy. What are the game changers out there? And not since the invention of the automobile have we seen so much game-changing innovation in mobility. The combination of open data, apps, technology, and entrepreneurship have opened a whole new world. And some of these come on like gangbusters. I'm talking about Uber, Lyft, Google. But it's not only them, it's many small startups, car sharing groups, bike sharing groups, groups that provide real travel time information that can help people plan their lives accordingly. These are all rooted in the new sharing economy. And when we look at automated vehicles coming up, talk about a game changer. All of these are going to have infrastructure requirements. All of them are going to affect mobility. All of them are going to be relevant to transportation professionals. And we have to understand what outcomes do we want from all of that. So I will leave you with those messages. It's my privilege, my honor, and my good fortune to be with you here in the Upper Peninsula. Thank you very much.